Cinema has always been a part and parcel of Tamil life, taking a central place in Tamil society's life and culture. In many households, it is part of hospitality to treat guests by taking them to a film. Not doing so could even amount to breaking social etiquette. Places, addresses, or bus stops are identified using cinema theatres as their reference point. Going through the more prominent cities' main streets, one cannot but see the Tamil superstars' gigantic cutouts that advertise their latest films. In the state of Tamil Nadu, cinema is everywhere and in everything. This is Filmkopath's attempt to understand the roots, recurring motifs, and the reasons behind this cinema's culture uniqueness, all converging into the beauty of Tamil cinema. Before moving on, once again requesting you to subscribe to Filmkopath and hit the bell icon not to miss any video notifications. We need your support to move forward. Tamil cinema emerges from the Tamil language and politics, incorporating both cultural and entertainment strands. The Tamil language is traditionally understood as consisting of three streams, namely Iyal or literature, Isai or music, and Natakam or drama. This triple division of Tamil language, known as Muttamil, is an integral part of Tamil culture and eventually the crux of Tamil cinema's evolution. Today, if we look back at the 100 years history of Tamil cinema, we can distinguish the fundamental elements of the cinema culture. They are the Tamil culture and political identity, family and melodrama, the good versus evil narrative, the hero worship culture, and the sheer courage to take risks and subversions of all of the above. Let's now deep dive into the industry's history in trying to touch these essences of Tamil cinema one by one. In Tamil cinema, Tamil's use generates a symbolic, embodied, and affective connection to Tamilness and Tamil identity. Movie dialogues and songs often glorify and celebrate the Tamil language, people, culture, and identity. The reverberation and articulation of Dravidian identity and Tamil nationalism are profound in Tamil cinema. This is not to suggest that Tamil cinema does not participate in Indian nationalism or uphold an Indian identity. The practice of introducing nationalistic symbols such as the charkha and the Gandhi cap had begun during the silent era itself. Gandhian agenda for social upliftment was handled in films like Harijana Singham, Desa Munetram, Thyaga Bhumi, and Matra Bhumi in the 1930s. You have more than a few subtle or on-the-face references of national politics in a Tamil film even today. For instance, a new age complicated romance like Taramani suddenly plugs in an interesting demonetization reference to assure that these are characters and people intrinsic to India. It is just that India is conceptualized from a Tamil subject position, a protagonist with Tamil roots inside the narrative conflict. This marking of ethnicity and the place of origin is quite common in Tamil cinema. Films are generally set in Tamil cities and villages, or the characters from these places moving to other parts of the country or world. Say for instance, in the Tamil version of Roja, the girl comes from a remote village in Tamil Nadu, as it appears on the screen. But in the Hindi version, she comes from Uttar Pradesh. These settings present recognizable differences and a social milieu that is specific to Tamil Nadu. For instance, Tamil masculinity is epitomized by wearing a moustache, physical prowess, authority, sexual virility, and the capacity to control. Clean-shaven male Tamil actors on screen are an exception, as opposed to Hindi cinema where it is a norm. Similarly, the veshti is the traditional attire of Tamil men and the sari among women. Though modern Indian and Western outfits are also worn, these traditional costumes and styles are employed to ground the character's identity in the film. Even identities within the state or cities are distinguished, like we see a school uniform-clad Dhanush singing in Puddupettai.
Puddupettai, Kasimede, Ennore, Vyasarpadi, Yenga area. Anna Nagar, KK Nagar, T Nagar, Boat Club, Unga area. Parchanaye kitta varada.
be the South or West Chennai neighborhood stories of Maniratnam or Gautam Menon, or the recent obsession with North Chennai by directors like Vetrimaran or P. A. Ranjit, to the dialect play by Kamal Haasan in so many of his films. The local, cultural and national identity establishment remains a key factor for the essence of Tamil cinema. The roots of Tamil melodrama were perhaps laid in its origin in theatre. During the silent film era, most of the films were based on the well-known stories from the Puranas, and almost every actor came from the stage. Women, mainly from the so-called lower strata in society, stunt masters or magicians were employed to keep the audience entertained during the silent movie. These were acts that punctuated the motion picture with a fixed quota of entertainment. And later, in the age of talkies, the whole package got converted into melodramatic formulas of circular narratives, accompanied by music, song, and dance sequences, fight scenes, or exaggerated humor. The music specifically has constantly enhanced this melodrama in Tamil cinema, starting from a time when the heroes and heroines were more celebrated for their voice and musical talent than acting, to the works of New Age masters like Ilayaraja or A.R. Rahman, known for their innovation and eclecticism. Music has been integral to Tamil cinema, ranging from blends of Carnatic or Western melodic or rhythmic patterns to orchestral themes, electronic instruments, or minimalistic songs. Tamil film music has emerged as an independent cultural phenomena, increasing the hold of cinema on its people. Family, being one of Tamil society's core elements, has also been a recurring theme in its cinema. Films have been upholding family as a sacred social institution, and themes of loyalty to death, sacrificing love, harmony, generosity, happiness in a joint family, and filial piety has often been repeated. And since family is seen as the hub of culture, unusual women characters have to be constantly tamed and brought into the family's fold. The heroine most often is put as an epitome of chastity, even if she is found to oblige to the hero's fetishes in imaginary song sequences. But for the other woman, often played by Jyothi Lakshmi or Silk Smitha, such song sequences are non-imagined, real ones. This can also be related back to Amman's abundance, cinema in Tamil Nadu, the epitome of purity and chastity, an integral part of Tamil household. In films like Adi Parashakti by K.S. Gopalakrishnan, it is the goddess who creates Shiva and Vishnu and is limited not to mere consorts to the great male deities. But coming to the woman of flesh and blood, the depictions are mostly different. It is directors like C.V. Sridhar, K. Balachandar, Bharathi Raja or Balu Mahendra who molded these melodramatic motifs into a more relatable artistic flavor. Sridhar, known as the Navarasa director, explored multiple genres, always using a combination of stars, melodrama, and melodious music. K. Balachandar stuck to socially themed films revolving around families. Yet, his women protagonists were headstrong, intelligent, and independent people, usually under complicated interpersonal relationships. One has to also owe to K. Balachandar for introducing and shaping up all the who's who of contemporary Tamil cinema, from Kamal Haasan to Rajnikanth, Sridevi to Prakash Raj, to Nasser, and even A.R. Rahman as the producer of Roja. Bharathi Raja brought the social melodrama of the villages from inside studios to live locations. While the story was still consumed in melodrama, the visuals were not. The hero got into a simpleton makeover, and the heroine roles were no more dominated by fair skin. Balu Mahendra perhaps stands at an extreme most distant from the legacy of melodrama within the bygone generation. He brought naturalism to Tamil cinema, putting on a far more realistic approach than anyone before. And from this legacy of melodrama, the good versus evil narrative was built within Tamil cinema. Both Ramayana and Mahabharata have been inspirations in the construct of the Tamil villain. It is to be noted that the title of the first ever Tamil film, Keechakavadham in 1916, was derived from its villain. A first among many other movies where the villains were derived from mythology. Around the 40s, the mythological villains were replaced by evil characters with traditional or legal authority on society. The very popular Nambiar or Asokan embodied the corrupt politicians, rapacious landlords, or unethical industrialists. Along with their evil scheming, the menacing laughter and bulging eyes stuck out in the audience's mind. However, the atheist or pro-communist ethos that flourished beyond the 80s in other industries never took much of a rise in the Tamil good versus evil stories. There were attempts in films like Sivappu Mali or Purachikaran, but in other flicks like Gentlemen or Anniyan, we find the honest religious Brahmins being harassed by the non-Brahmin villains. The hero, usually after an attempt to bring the villain to justice through legal means, eventually decides that dharma is better than democracy to dispense justice, giving rise to a spate of vigilante movies in the 80s like Sattam Oru Irutarai, Naan Mahan Allah, Naan Sigappu Manidan, or Oru Kaidin Diary. A similar pattern follows in the cop movies, where in the 70s we find the cop hero tackling the villains in a legal way, as in En Kadamai or Thanga Pattakam. But when the cop hero moves to the 80s or 90s, he is needed to overstep the law, as in Kakki Sattai, Kadamai Kanniyam Kattapadu, Satriyan, and Walter Vetrivel. Till very recently, and we will talk about that soon, Tamil cinema has laid a strong demarcation between the good and evil. And that is the reason when Govind Nihalani's Dhrokal gets remade as Kamal Haasan starer Kuruti Punal, it does not give the antagonist Nasser enough space to voice his ideology or story as given to Ashish Vidyarthi in the original. This can be tracked down to another fundamental pillar of Tamil cinema, hero worship. Image worship holds a pertinent place in Tamil culture's history. Characters from films are considered role models for children and youth to imitate. Here, film heroes are next to gods and goddesses, and even temples are built for film stars and rituals performed to their images. Beginning from Tyagaraja Bhagawadhar, M.G. Ramachandran, Sivaji Ganesan, Rajnikanth, Kamal Haasan, Vijay, Ajit, Dhanush to Vijay Sethupathi, and from K.P. Sundarambal, Savitri, Padmini, Jayalalitha, K.R. Vijay, Khushbu, Jyotika, Simran to Nayanthara. The celebration of the Tamil stars have never been restricted to on-screen. No wonder so many chief ministers from the state since the 1960s come from a cinema background. Politics and its power are primarily imposed and built based on mass support that their real images already fetched for them. This strong sense of attachment from the fans or fan associations also had its own share of problems when we see a Tamil hero being bogged down by the image and demands favorable with the fans. Unless you are someone like a Kamal Haasan who always has taken risks of breaking his image and thriving on something new every time in every other film. Kamal or the likes of him have always pushed the envelope for Tamil cinema, taking immense risks and bringing in the subversions to all the elemental identities of Tamil cinema we spoke this far. Tamil cinema has taken itself to a position where it can continuously afford to take big risks. Do all of these risks pay off? No, they don't. But when they do, it more than often makes milestones and pushes Indian cinema to a new high. Be the prosthetics in Indian or Avvai Shanmugihi, or the animated action sequences of Alavandan. The Tamil industry owes to Kamal Haasan in taking risks time and again, trying to hit the status quo every time. Look at this scene from Michael Madana Kamarajan, an extremely difficult feat to achieve in the early 90s, which Kamal does just for the sake of art. The film would have worked even without this scene, and yet director Singeetham Srinivasa Rao and Kamal challenged themselves. It is no wonder it is the same actor-director combo who had previously taken up the challenge of making a silent comedy drama, as in Pushpaka Vimana, or putting up a popular hero as a dwarf, as in Apurva Sagodharagal. You also have a Maiskin who has constantly differed from the conventions, be in narrative structure, casting, characterizations, or camera movements and placements, or a Shankar who has never shied away from ambitious experiments. Subverting the fundamental structures has also been very popular in contemporary Tamil cinema, a risk on its own. Films like Vinay Thanadi Varuvaya or Aruvi have countered the conventional image of women in Tamil cinema. A film like Adari, which is anyway a significant challenge for heroine Amala Paul on the screen, has also presented a storyline where the heroine goes through a long character arc without support from any men. It also feels great when today, among all the male superstars of the industry, owning their own individual taglines, we have Nayanthara carrying her own tagline in all her films. She is called the Lady Superstar, and it is the same Nayanthara who presents a more humane goddess avatar in Mukkuti Amman. Refreshing changes are coming in every corner in the universe of Tamil cinema. In Oru Nalkodu, when Dinesh says he doesn't like his family very much, but he is helpless and bound to them, the legacy of family portrayal of Tamil cinema is broken only to give in to more relatable and human characters. And then, in 2019, we have a Peranbu and Super Deluxe where transgenders are welcomed into the family. The good versus evil trope has also gone through multiple experiments. Femme fatales, as in the arrogant industrialist wife Vijaya Shanti in Manan or the jilted lover Ramya Krishnan in Padayappa, have perfectly filled in for the macho villains even in the 90s. But new age films like Tyagarajan Kumararaja's Aranyakandam or Arun Mohan's Sarabham do not even judge the not so ideal woman and are happy to leave them in the grey zone. Dhanush's Koki Kumar in Puddupettai or Anbu in Vada Chennai would have been the villain in Gautam Menon's Cop universe, but today in Vetrimaran or Selvaraj Grey universe, they rise as the anti-heroes. The honest, uncompromising politician and the no-nonsense cop with little considerations of human rights have been celebrated in Tamil cinema for decades. But in 2013, Vijay Sethupathi starer Sodu Kavum, they are subjected to a parody treatment. And then in Gayatri and Pushkar's Vikram Vedha or Karthik Subbaraja's Jigar Tanda, by the end of the film we wonder who was the good and who was the evil. With changing times and the crisis in political narratives finding its reflection on films, the glitter of heroism gradually fades even in Tamil cinema, with more and more subversions drawing attention to the shadows.
Tamil cinema has brought social changes time and again, being a tool which reinforced social and religious sentiments as well as challenged the traditions and customs. It became a powerful tool in the hands of the politicians, and now it is a vent for public expression and expectation, a voice for the common man. With subtitles, OTT releases, and improved national and international exposure, it has reached much beyond the Tamil audience to be a part of world cinema. Long live Tamil cinema.